Hi guys, it's Angie with Fun Endeavors Tie-Dye Lab. Today I'm going to make another rolled ice dye design, and for this one I'm going to use a color palette surrounding Avalon, which is one of the new Dharma ice dye colors. So for this design, I'm going to grab one corner of the hem of the shirt and fold it up past the opposite shoulder of the shirt. You know, I do a design like this where I do a fan fold, but this time I'm going to roll the design. So I'm going to use an old piece of sinew and a washable marker, and I'm going to place the sinew right at that corner part of the hem. Then I'm going to draw an arc on the shirt. Now normally for my fan fold design, I would start fan folding, but instead I'm going to begin to roll the shirt. And I'm going to roll right on that line, and then the fabric on either side of that line, I'm going to use my other hand to kind of promote that fabric rolling as well. I'm going to try to roll the fabric that's right on the line pretty tightly. The fabric on either side of that line, I'm going to just let it organically roll. That part I don't care if it's really tight or not. Once I have the shirt completely rolled, I'm going to fold the shirt on the initial line that I drew and rolled. So it's not going to fold the shirt completely in half. Then I'm going to use some kite string, and I'm going to hold all of these rolls in place with the kite string. When I tied this shirt, I was tying quite a few shirts all at the same time. And so I went ahead and tied the shirt and placed it aside. Well, then life happened and I got super busy, so honestly, I think this shirt sat there for probably maybe even a month before I actually got around to applying the dye to it. Which, by the way, it's not going to hurt if you've already soaked a shirt in soda ash and tied it like this and then just kind of forgot about it. As long as you haven't moved it around a whole lot, where maybe your soda ash crumbled out of the shirt, you should be completely fine to go ahead and apply the dye to it. You still have a soda ash soaked shirt and it should be good to go. But if you're tying this and want to apply the dye immediately, you can do that. It is perfectly fine to apply the dye while the shirt is still damp. Okay, so for my setup, I have a piece of vinyl guttering, and I've placed the shirt down inside of the vinyl guttering, and then I'm going to use another piece of kite string to run through that hole where I folded the shirt over. I'm going to tie the kite string to the shirt, and then I'm going to attach the kite string with a small clip to the end of the piece of vinyl guttering. That's going to help keep the shirt from sliding out of the guttering down into the muck. And muck is defined as the melting ice that's mixed with the dye. Then, because the shirt is completely dry, I'm going to lightly spray it with a little bit of soda ash solution that I've placed inside of a spray bottle. That will help keep the dye, or help the dye to stick to the top of the shirt a little bit better. I also want to go ahead and divide my shirt into some sections where I'm going to apply the dye. So for that, I'm going to use a washable marker. For this shirt, I've chosen 5 different dye colors, but I want to repeat the Avalon twice on the shirt, so I'm going to divide the shirt into 6 sections. I'm going to begin by applying Avalon from Dharma Trading Company right at the very end where I folded the shirt over, and then in the very middle section. The tag of this shirt is hanging out right there, so I want to make sure to pull that up so that I get plenty of dye underneath where that tag is kind of folding over on top of the shirt. And I found with these roll designs, I prefer to add quite a bit of dye to the very front side or the first side that I apply dye to, so that I don't have to go back and apply dye to the back side of the shirt. So you'll notice I'm adding a lot of dye to each one of the sections. The next color I'm using is dark green from Dharma Trading Company, and I decided to change it up a little bit and add a little bit of dark green outside the Avalon, skip a space, and then add a little bit more dark green before the next line of Avalon. In that space in between, I'm going to add deep space from Dharma. The next color I'm going to apply on the other side of Avalon is sapphire blue from Dharma, followed by hunter green from Dharma. And hunter green is a special order color. You can still purchase those from Dharma, but you have to order a large quantity. If you don't want to order a large quantity, there's a Facebook group called Tie-Dye Supplies Marketplace, and I'll leave a link down below this video in the description to that group. Usually people buy the larger quantities of the special order colors and repackage them down to smaller quantities to sell. Then over the top of the dye, I'm going to add an additional sprinkle of dry soda ash, followed by a pretty large chunk of ice. I made this large chunk of ice in, I think it's considered a pencil holder, which I purchased from the dollar store. These fit perfectly in this vinyl guttering. Then down at the bottom where I have all of the shirt left, I'm going to apply some larger chunks of ice, which I've made in some silicone ice molds. I'm going to incline this shirt too to allow the dye to flow down the shirt. So to do that, I have a plastic tote, and I'm going to place one end of the vinyl guttering down inside of the tote and leave the other end hanging off the edge. And because of the shape of this shirt down where I folded it over, because it's so thick right in that area, it's very difficult with the shirt laying flat to get enough dye in that area. So while it's inclined, I'm going to add a little bit more additional Avalon to that area, a little more soda ash, and then I'm going to place a couple of ice chunks down in that spot too. Then I'm going to place the shirt aside and allow the ice to melt. After this first layer of ice melted, I still had some undissolved dye left sitting on top, so I came back and added another one of the larger pieces of ice to the top of the shirt. The bottom portion is thinner, so even though it does have a little undissolved dye left sitting on top, I didn't add more ice to that area. After that second layer of ice melted, I turned the shirt over to see how my saturation was, and it was really good, except in one of those little areas up at the very top part of the shirt where I folded it over. So I just added a little more Avalon to that spot, a little more soda ash, and a couple of ice cubes, and placed the shirt aside to allow all of that to melt. After that ice melted, I left it for probably about 48 hours before I began rinsing the shirt. As you can see, when I turn the shirt over, I have really good saturation all throughout the shirt at this point. At least it looks like it from the outside of the shirt. So to begin rinsing, I started in cold water to rinse out the soda ash. Then I went ahead and gradually warmed the water up to hot, untied the shirt, and continued rinsing in hot water to try to rinse out the excess dye that didn't bond with the fabric. Instead of rinsing for a long time, I prefer to soak my shirts. So this is actually the second shirt that I have rinsed out today. So I placed the first shirt and this shirt down inside of my utility sink, added some really hot water to the sink, a little bit of Blue Dawn dish soap, left both of the shirts in the hot water, and allowed them to soak. And yes, even though both of the shirts are very different color palettes, because I've added the Blue Dawn dish soap to the water and because I've rinsed them really well to rinse out any of the soda ash, I'm not concerned about the colors depositing on the opposite shirt. Even though I'm pretty confident in the process, if one of these shirts had a lot of white and I was intending to leave a lot of white on the shirt, I would not soak them together. But in this case, they're perfectly fine to go ahead and soak them in hot water together as long as the Blue Dawn dish soap is added and as long as I've rinsed well enough in regular water to try to rinse out all the soda ash or almost all the soda ash from the shirt. Once the water in the sink cools off, I'm going to change it out and I'm going to continue that soaking process using hot water and Blue Dawn dish soap until my water is remaining almost clear. Then I will place both of the shirts into my washing machine, wash them using a hot water cycle along with some Dharma's professional textile detergent, which in my washer takes the place of the Blue Dawn. I am one of those tie-dyers that prefer to use professional textile detergent in my washer rather than Blue Dawn. I've done some research out online about using Blue Dawn dish soap in the washing machine, and I kind of get mixed messages. I mean, some people say, yes, it's fine to do as long as you use just a very small amount. Others say that if you use it in a high efficiency machine, it can cause a lot of problems because dish soap does suds quite a bit. So I just use professional textile detergent. But don't take my word for it. I mean, do your own research, and if you've been using Dawn and it works great for you, then go for it. Okay, so the shirt has been washed, dried, and ironed, and let's see what it looks like. Okay, so what do you guys think? Because I think this one is really cool. I think Avalon is such a pretty color. You know, it's got the greens and the blues together. So I just paired it with some other greens and blues. And I think it looks really pretty. I like the kind of wavy, streaky, flowy lines that are coming from that rolled and double diagonal design. And then I love the way the colors just kind of mesh together really well. That seafoamy type color that showed up in the shirt is really pretty. And in that rolled area of the shirt, the depth in there looks very three-dimensional. You know, it's got the darker colors in it and the lighter colors, and then mixed with that design, it just looks very, I don't know, it looks very textured, and I think that looks cool. Right down the middle of the shirt, I have a little bit of, it's not white, but it is lighter, and I don't really mind that so much. Right through the middle portion of the shirt where you're seeing the dark green, that was what was at the very, very end of the shirt. And so I have a few little wisps of purple in there, partially from the sapphire and some of the other blues that I've added. I actually think it brings a little bit of interest into that area. So I really love this shirt. I love the Avalon color, the blues and greens mixed with it, the design in the shirt. But what do you guys think? Please drop me some comments down below and let me know. And if you've used this Avalon from Dharma Trading Company, what do you think about it? I mean, I love this newest batch of ice dye colors that they released. And I think Avalon is absolutely gorgeous. But drop me some comments down below and let me know if you've used it, what you've used it on, what your thoughts are on it. And if you've enjoyed the video, I sure would appreciate it if you would like it. And if you'd subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'll hit the bell, you'll receive a notification whenever I upload a new video. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a great day.